Hello, everybody. We're going to talk a little bit about adding integers today as a continuation with our integer rules. Yesterday, you were looking at and reviewing how to interpret absolute value or distance on a number line. And now we're going to be looking at how integers are used and different rules that we can come up with when we're adding integers. So, of course, an integer is any whole number and its opposite, including zero. And you can see I have two different colored integers represented here by different colored chips. So I have anytime you see a green chip, it's going to represent a positive integer, and a red chip will represent a negative integer. So we're going to start off really easy, not to insult your intelligence on this first problem, but just so you can recognize how the integers are going to be shown. So we have here 4 plus 7. So positive 4 plus a positive 7, you can see there's 4 green plus 7 green. Of course, that is positive 11. Again, not insulting your intelligence. I know you know how to do this. It's just so you can recognize how the following or the next problems will be set up. Okay, easy. 5 plus 7 we already know is 12. 12 plus 8 is 20. And 6 plus 100 is 106. Okay, so all of these are positives. We're going farther to the right on the number line, and it's remaining positive values. But what happens when we start to have negative values in the twist a little bit? Okay, here I have, for example, negative 3 plus negative 4. Well, that can be confusing to some people. If you think about it in terms of money, sometimes it can be easier to comprehend. For example, suppose you owe me $3 and then you owe me another 4. How much do you owe me in total? 7. Notice how it remains negative, what you owe me. And you can see we have red chips here as well. 3 red chips or 3 negative values plus 4 negative values will give us negative 7. So negative 3 plus negative 4, negative 7. Notice how we're really adding these values together because we're basically going farther to the left on a number line. I have another example here. Negative 8 plus negative 3. So you borrow $8, you borrow $3, you owe $11. So negative 8 plus negative 3 is negative 11. Okay, you add the values together, those two numbers together, and it stays negative. So I'm going to give you some problems that I'm going to ask you to try to solve on your own. Please pause the video and try to simplify these expressions. All right, on this one, we have negative 7 plus negative 8. You're going to add these values together, and because they're both negative, your answer will remain negative. And here we have 11 and 9. Well, 11 and 9, both negatives, will end up giving us a negative 20. And then negative 20 plus negative 7. Again, it's going to be added together to be a negative 27. It stays negative. All right, that's pretty simple, right? Let's continue and look at some other examples, okay? Now you'll see we have both colored chips represented. We have negative 2 and we have a positive 5. So now we don't have that easy aspect of just adding all the positives together or adding all the negatives together. Now we have to do a little thinking. Now, suppose you borrow $2 from me, but then you give me a 5 spot back. How much change would you get? You would get a positive $3 back. Or you can just look at it as the chips kind of cancel one another out. If you have a negative 1 and a positive 1 come together, that gives you a 0, right? You owe me $1, you pay me back $1, you owe me 0. And we can actually cancel out these values. A negative 1, a positive 1 will give us 0. So what's left? Positive 3. So we can see that negative 2 plus 5 is a positive 3. Notice what we did with these values. Do you see how 2 and 5, we actually kind of subtracted them, right? 5 minus 2 is 3. And notice how the answer is positive. Do you see how we have more positives in this problem? I want you to think about that when we look at our next problem to see if we can maybe form a rule, okay? How about 3 plus negative 4? So again, if you try to kind of cancel out for every one positive, you cancel out every one, a negative. So you have a positive, a negative, positive, a negative, positive, and a negative. So what's left? One negative, negative 1. Well, let's just look at the values here. Do you see how you have a 3 and a 4? Well, the signs are different, so I'm going to actually find the difference. 4 minus 3 is 1. And notice how I have more negatives left over, or I have the greater absolute value. It's negative. My answer is -1. Now I would like you to try some problems without the counters. Again, I'm going to pause the video and see if you can try these on your own. Now remember, all three of these values have a positive and a negative. So let's see if you can remember the rule. Technically, we subtracted, right? And you can go ahead and subtract in your head the bigger number minus this bigger like value minus the smaller, and then whichever you have more of is your answer, okay? So if you have more negatives, your answer is negative. If you have more positive, your answer is positive. So go ahead and pause the video and see if you can solve these three. All right, so here we have a positive and a negative, so I know I'm going to subtract. Well, 6 minus 10 is not something I'd really do, but 10 minus 6 I would, which is a 4, right? And which one do I have more of? Do I have more positives or more negatives? I have more negative, so my answer is -4. Again, different signs, one's positive, one's negative, so I subtract. 7 minus 3 is 4, and then I bring down my negative because I have more negatives. Now remember, I know it technically it does say plus, but I subtract because on a number line, I'm looking at the difference between, starting at 0 and going to the left -7 and to the right 3 spots. I'm still on the negative side. And finally, I have 11 plus -9. Different signs, so I'm going to find the difference. 11 minus 9 is 2. But notice this time I have more positive values left over, okay? So my answer just remains a +2. I wonder if there's an easy way we can kind of remember this. I don't know. Maybe a rule, maybe a song. Feel free to sing along. Same signs, add and keep, different signs, subtract. Use the sign of the bigger number, then you'll be exact. Hey, same signs, add and keep, different signs, subtract. Use the sign of the bigger number, then you'll be exact. Hey, okay. Feel free to sing along next time and rewind it if you want, or look up Row, Row, Row Your Boat karaoke style. So let me talk about these lyrics. Same signs, add and keep. Same signs meaning if both of your values, or even if you have 3 terms that you're adding, if they're all positive, you add the numbers together. Or if everything's negative, you still add those values together. But then you just keep the sign. So if you're adding all positive numbers together, your answer stays positive. If you add all negative answers together, you add the values, but your answer remains negative. Now, when you look at that next line, different signs subtract. If one integer is positive, one integer is negative, you find the difference between those numbers. Different signs, you find the difference, or you subtract, okay? Now the next line reads, and it goes along with this one, use the sign of the air quote bigger number, okay? Really what that means is whichever value has the greater absolute value, you use that sign. Or whichever one has, you have more negatives or you have more positive, you use that answer. So like if you had, for example, or that sign, I mean, if you had like -11 plus 6, see how they're different? Positive and negative, you would find the difference. So use the sign of that bigger number. It means the number with the greater absolute value. Well, the absolute value of -11 versus the absolute value of 6, clearly this number is bigger, and that's a negative number. Or you can just simply think about it as you have more negatives than positives, so your answer is going to remain negative, okay? So I hope this little tutorial helped you. If you need additional help, please let me know, or sing the song. It'll help you greatly. So what I would like you to do, so what you're going to do is try a few basic problems on your own today. Just try to do some of the rules, and then tomorrow we'll go a little bit more in depth with some word problems and a little bit more challenging problems, okay? If you need help, always feel free to stop by. I have a Google Meet every day for office hours from 1:30 to 2. Have a good one.